I'm the founder of Raymond Whittaker Design. A little bit about my background. I spent a long time in leadership development. My background is in education, public policy, and philanthropy. I've done diplomacy work all over the world, and learning how to be a good diplomat helps me to help organizations and the folks within them learn how to talk with each other with respect. I've trained a lot of folks in the last couple of years. Used to be a teacher, a school leader, a state and national director. But what's most important to me is being a mother, a wife. I'm a bookworm, a foodie. I am the friend who posts the pictures of all the pies and all the cakes and all the breads. So excited to be here with you today. And the name of my firm, as I mentioned, is Raymond Whittaker. Our goal is to build a more just and equitable world, one person, team, and institution at a time. And we do that through program design, facilitation, coaching, and strategic planning. And in the spirit of strategic planning, that's actually what I'm going to spend some time sharing with you all a bit about, how you can use strategic planning to help reduce risk. And so I want to start just with kind of a general understanding and an orientation. And if you feel me on this, type in a smiley face in the comments. Human capital is our greatest asset. Now, if you agree with that, go ahead and drop a smiley face in the chat. Human capital is our greatest asset. So often in discussions of strategic planning, that's sometimes the last thing that we talk about is the people element and the folks who are actually the breath and the life of an institution or an organization. And so I'm going to spend some time in that area. And I also think it's pretty important to do so. In this pandemic moment right now, there's been a huge shift to human-centered practices. We have all had to literally slow down. People are extending a little bit more care or a lot more care to each other, patience with one another. And simultaneously, we have a huge national movement that's calling us to question and think and to really think about the sanctity of Black life. So in that spirit, in this time that we're in right now, really zeroing in on how to support human capital is one of the most important ways a business can reduce risk. And so if you don't remember anything else, I want you to think about these 3 points: onboarding, professional development, and policy and practice. And so we're going to start by talking about onboarding. And onboarding, of course, is how teams and people and individuals are introduced to your culture, to your organization's culture, to your mission, to your systems. Now, you might be the only person on staff right now, or you might only have a staff of 2, or maybe you're managing many, many more people. You want to start thinking about onboarding because how you start is how you finish. Onboarding is your introduction. And then second, thinking about professional development. Professional development, we're going to frame it a little bit more as leadership development in our discussion. And finally, policy and practice and how we can center equity in those things. All right, onboarding. So we have this lovely couple on their first date. Onboarding is like a first date. They're smiling, they planned out their outfits, maybe they're even coordinating a little bit. Onboarding is critical for reducing risks because onboarding is your introduction, is a person's introduction to your organization. And so when you're thinking about who's going to be a part of your team and the kind of people you want to draw and retain and how your clients are going to engage with your business, you want to think about how you onboard your team into that space. It's where people are introduced to the relationships and the systems that are going to help them be successful in their role. What's really, really critical about this is onboarding shows live in real time what's really valued at your business in practice. So it's one thing to say that your organization values equity, or it's one thing to say that your organization values dreaming, or whatever it is that's your thing or your jam. If your staff members do not experience that within their first 60 to 90 days, chances are something is awry. So if you have visions of growing and expanding, which I hope everyone does, you want to think ahead of time. Again, even if you are the only staff member, or it's you and your partner, or you and your assistant, or whoever, whatever your team looks like right now, you want to start thinking about how you bring in people into your organization, because they're going to be the ambassadors of your organization and eventually be the net promoters of your organization. All right, next, professional development. So I'm going to speak about this in a couple of different ways. So one, we're going to frame professional development as leadership development, and there is a difference. When you are thinking about how you care for the people who are on your team, those folks who are going to be those ambassadors for your work, you want to think about how you invest in them. And your professional development should be aligned to both personal and professional interests. You should also be thinking about your capacity. What are your capacity needs? Like, what's your current capacity? And what is your future capacity? What do you want to be the skill sets that are a part of your team? I'm also going to spend a moment and talk about millennials. So as of 2016, I believe it was, millennials were the largest generation within the workforce. What's sad is, of all the different generations, millennials reported being the least engaged. And so there's a disconnect there, right? If you want to have the people who are part of your team, who are part of your organization, last and be around for a long time, there has to be some sort of a connection. Studies indicate that by 2025, that millennials will represent 75% of the workforce. 75%. So it's about time we start figuring out how to engage. One of the things we do know about millennials in the workforce is that millennials like to move around. They like to know what their path forward is. And so that's where professional development or leadership development comes into play. If people are in an environment where they feel valued, where they are being invested in, not only are people going to integrate or embrace the brand, which Bernard is going to be talking about a little bit later, but they're going to want to stick around. And making that investment in leadership development is good for your brand, it's good for retention, and it also it helps you to build a culture and the mechanisms that you want to stand strong within your company. All right, finally, policy and practice. Policy and practice. So if you have a policy handbook or some kind of manual within your organization that kind of talks about how you do things, I want you to put a 7 in the comments. And I'll just wait because I don't see any 7s yet. Oh, there's one. Okay, we've got some 7s coming in. Right on, right on. Okay. Policies are beautiful and they are wonderful. However, if there is a disconnect between your policies and your practice, you're going to have some problems and you're going to have some risks. And so that's where intent versus impact comes in. Policy states your intention. Practice is what aligns to your actual impact. And so it's important during time to really spend time thinking about that alignment. One of those places of alignment that's incredibly important is focusing on equity and how your staff members, how your team thinks about and experiences equity. This is also connected to onboarding, but it's something you should really zero in on when you are planning for the future. The W.K. Kellogg Foundation a few years back released a study called The Business Case for Racial Equity. Sadly, there are some people who do not understand the value of equity outside of business cases. that is a document for them. So if you are trying to, trying to engage your board, if you are trying to engage funders, investors, sort of around why this is important, that's a really great resource to help them orient around it. And when equity is at the center of your work, that is often when you see that connection between retention. And then finally, evaluation, accountability, and narrative. These are the things that help you know if your policy and practice are going to be supporting the mission and the goals of your organization. Now, evaluation can look like many things. In my line of work, I do a lot of presentations, and in my presentations and in my workshops, I always have some way of checking in with the folks that I've worked with to find out if what we're talking about makes sense or how they experience my leadership. This is also something that's really good for managers as well. Even if you manage a team of 1 or 7,000, whatever you, well, I guess that's not a small business. Maybe it is by definition. Hodari can clarify under the small business terms. But whether you have a large or a small team, you want to have some way of checking in to find out how you are performing in your leadership role. That helps you with accountability. Policy and practice are also really critical when you're thinking about the narrative of your organization. What is being articulated, not just in theory, not just in policy, but what is being articulated in practice about how you do things and what is the why that's behind that. So I mentioned the business case for racial equity. There are a bunch of other resources that are out there that speak to that. Some tools that you can think about when you want to kind of bridge that gap between policy and practice and even onboarding is thinking about in your onboarding plan, having some sort of document that clearly states what someone can expect from you as a manager, you as a business owner, you as an insert role or title, so that not only they hear it, but there's a document that they can refer back to over time. That helps you check for biases, that helps you check for alignment, and that helps your organization to stay strong. So I am really looking forward to engaging with you all some more through the questions. So please feel free to shout those out in the chat. My contact information is on the screen, and look forward to connecting. I'll turn it over to Bernard.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Bernard Kanjoma. Like Hodari mentioned, the co-founder of Naranjo Designs Creative Studio, founded with the purpose of representing small to medium enterprise organizations, specifically because of the challenge that small businesses have in finding credible graphic design, web developers, or any digital branding services, digital and branding services. So that's why we seek to exist. Most importantly, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Importance of branding and creating a footprint. Logo. Your logo is the first thing we'll talk about. What is your logo? What do people think about when they see your logo? I know that as a startup, as a bootstrap business, everything that you can name under the sun, which Shaniece can attest to, same thing with Elizabeth. That's why I'm last. They save the best for last. So, but when you begin to make that decision to say, I will venture into becoming an entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur, then you grow to your LLC, then you grow to everything that you can grow into. Your logo is your most important thing. Your logo is the most important asset that you have. Your logo will speak volumes. Your logo will be remembered. It will be remembered for what it looks like, what it represents, what it says. So most importantly, when you're considering starting an organization or a business, anything, logo is very important. It's who you are. That's how people remember you. That's how people see you. And for us, for example, our company, we picked orange because my partner's last name is Naranjo. In Spanish, it means orange. But when you also look at it, orange is a very happy color. And we added the green in there because it's an accent color. So when you see it, you're like, oh, the Orange Company. So you might reference it to us as the Orange Company. In a couple years, when we grow, and hoping that everything works the way it needs to, we will drop all the letters in the logo, and we will only have the orange because we would have established our brand, right? So you also have to have a strategic plan, like Elizabeth mentioned, and obviously build that up. Secondly, let's go into your website. And I understand that there's a lot of challenges, but we're here to also help you. Reach out if you need any advice or anything, but your website is very critical. We're in the digital era, and if you didn't know that a website is important, well, you do now, right? So there's a lot of resources. So you need to make sure that regardless of where your business is, have a website. It doesn't have to be 12 pages, 10 pages. All you need is one page, one or two, an informative page that talks about your business. And anything else, you can always share it with people in an electronic format. And things are tough out there, but you have to ensure, because the first thing anyone is going to ask is, what's your website? Oh, there's no excuses for that. Your logo, your website, your business card. Now, moving on to the next point, your website can be incorporated in different ways, but in the beginning phases, please ensure that you have what you call an informative page. It informs the visitor or anyone visiting your website that you are ABCD. Because if you don't have that, you can have negative impact from that, and it can be a little bit of a challenge to do business, as in today's world, everything is research. So please ensure that you have that. Now, moving on to the next point, your core values are reflected through your branding. And what does that mean? Well, when somebody looks at your material, meaning if you have a brochure, if it's just a flyer, if it's anything that you're sharing with them, if you do not have that piece put together, that's something that will reflect on you. There's no excuses for that. The moment you step into the business world or nonprofit world, whichever world you're in and you operate in, and there's a lack of a reflection of your brand, that's a challenging situation for you to be in, because it looks like you're not ready. So from us as an organization, from a standing point, from a business perspective, we ensure that your core values reflect what your business card looks like. It will speak volumes. And every client we've worked with, we've ensured that anytime somebody hands their business card, whether it's electronically or it's on paper, when people look at that card, they will remember that, because your first impression could be your last, as we all know that. Next, leveraging leveraging your brand and value. Just remember again, your leverage is what you leave with people. So it might seem like you're spending money or time on something that's unnecessary, but people want to ensure that when you're speaking to them, when you're presenting to them, anything that has to do with your organization, your brand is going to be what's going to be valued, because you might be in a pile with 10 other businesses, or organizations. How will you stick out? How will people say, let's look at this flyer, let's look at this brochure, let's look at this website? So you have to think about that every time you're working on these things. And you don't need a high value budget. And branding is a long-term game. And I can give you examples. Amazon, right? A to Z. Baskin Robbins, it's got the 31, right? FedEx, it's got the moving forward arrow in it. UPS, it's got the shield with United Parcel shipment services. So you have to ensure that anything that you're working on, you are leveraging your brand. General Motors, same thing. If we talk about small brands, you can think of your local brands. You can think of your local chiropractors. You can think of any CPA firms, or you can think of any medical companies, or you can think of the rehab companies that have physical therapy, right? ATI Wellness, you see it all over. You can think of Massage Envy. There's local brands, there's national brands, there's international brands. So keep in mind that when you create your logo, it is your brand. It is creating a footprint. So the goal is to make sure that you're going to grow with that. And you have to invest a lot of time. You have to ask a lot of questions. You have, if you're going to a professional, ensure that they're asking you questions. They're not giving you what they think is right for your business. Oh, you're a painter. This is what we'll give you. No. There's different meanings. You might have 4 different types of paint on your business card. Those 4 different types of paint might be what you believe in might turn into certain colors that bring a certain excitement, or that there has to be a meaning behind, there has to be a story behind your brand. So please ensure that your brand is very well leveraged, but it is the biggest value and asset that you have, other than winning your clients' interest because of the services you provide. Moving on. When we talk about separating business and personal brands, that is a very, very fine line. And we are seeing this in today's world simply because of what's happening around the world. And it happens with everybody. It happens with presidents, it happens with individuals, and it happens with organizations, what they represent. So right now, I'm going to make it very clear, and my Shaniece, Hodari, Elizabeth, and I, and the rest of the team, we had a discussion in how can we help our fellow small business or business owners or business leaders understand the importance of this. And it's the same, for example, when if you go out and you partake in athletics, you might be very quiet in the conference room, in the boardroom, and when you're on the court, whether it's a basketball court, tennis court, or on the golf course, you might say some things that will catch somebody off guard. You are on a different level. So to take that back, how you present your business is how people see you as a businessman. But sometimes there is a lack of separation because the man behind the business, or the woman behind the business, or the individual behind the business is also an individual. So you have to really ensure, when we transition from business to personal, there are two different things. How you express yourself as a business individual is based off of bringing a lot more value and an individual of significance to a community or to an organization or to a group of individuals, versus on a personal side. So in times like this, there have been mistakes made. And recently, I think we all learned about Marshall Mathers, also known as Eminem. He made a comment in the studio, and it was it's just something that came to him, and that was looked at as backlash. We also know that that is not well received amongst the communities, any communities when you are misrepresenting or disrespecting an organization that's doing well. Well, Marshall Mathers was speaking as Eminem. He was not speaking as Marshall Mathers. He was speaking as Eminem. But he forgot that, and he issued an apology. Same thing we saw recently in Detroit happened with Kid Rock, right? He mentioned a few things, and he also explained how he did not mean to say what he said, and this is who he is. He's always been this. So again, people looked at him as, hey, you're the son of Detroit, or you're this, but we have to remember that there's that separation. If we move into the next role and we look at our current president, he had his organization as a brand, and now he's the leader of the United States of America. There's that separation. So in branding, make sure that when you're representing your business, you're representing your business interests. When you're representing yourself as an individual, you're representing yourself. What does that mean? Social media, straight on point. Make sure that your views align, because sometimes people are buying your brand because of who you are, the man behind the brand, not the brand itself. Sometimes majority of the time, people will like you before they like what you're selling. So if you go out and misrepresent your brand, or there is a little bit of colored, it's gray area, that becomes a challenge. So moving forward, as we're all moving forward in this scenario, we need to ensure that our goal is to be clear, is to be respectful of our organization. You can step down on any given day, and people might not remember that you were a CEO or a director of a certain organization. They'll see you as an individual, or the other way around. So separating those two in branding is critical, especially in today's age where social media is at the tip of our palms, and you can say anything and forget or misguide yourself. So branding, very critical. In my opinion, I believe branding is the most critical point of your career or your organization or anything that you're doing. It sets the tone for who you are, who you represent, what you represent, and how you will be looked at moving forward. So when you invest in branding for yourself, do it the right way, spend as much time, do as much research, find things that relate to you. If it's colors, if it's messages, if it's symbols, make sure that those symbols are what represent you and they tell a story. Don't do it because that's what somebody is telling you in societies, but it has to resonate with you. I'm sure as you saw Elizabeth's logo, she has a story. Shaniece has a story about why her organization is Accutrak, right? So let's ensure that as we move forward, that's what we're doing. It seems obvious, but we've seen a lot of logos and they are not in sync with anything. But nevertheless, thank you very much to all of the attendees. And I'm really excited to have this opportunity to represent Detroit. I am originally from Malawi, Africa, so it's an honor to be a part of this. I do live here in the US and work here locally, but it's an honor to be a part of Detroit Startup Week and really looking forward to bringing a lot more value to this wonderful city filled with a lot of big hearts. With no further ado, I'm excited and ready to take any questions, and hopefully there'll be branding questions.
All right, so this is the time for questions. It was one comment put out there earlier. Small business owners or family-funded business may not understand how important strategic planning is, not just for big business. Elizabeth, do you want to add some additional comments, or even the other panelists, like how important is strategic planning overall to a small business?
Strategic planning is very important to to small businesses. Now, one misconception: a strategic plan does not have to be it doesn't have to be a 15-page document. It might be a one-pager that clearly articulates what your goals are, your objectives are, and basically how you want to live out your mission for that particular timestamp. And so it's important for small businesses in particular, especially if you have a desire to maybe one day scale, right? Or to one day grow. You want to be really clear about your aim. So how you actualize your mission in 2020 might look a little bit different from how you actualize your vision in 2025 or in 2030. Your mission may stay the same, but how you do it will look a little bit different. And the piece that I focused on was really strategically planning around human capital and why that's important in 5 quick points. It's going to attract and retain folks. It's going to boost your reputation. It's going to increase your innovation. It paves the way for upward mobility, and it encourages people to look forward.
Good overview. I will add to that strategic planning from a finance perspective. When you're going to scale your business, as Elizabeth alluded to, it's possible that you can scale your business much faster with financing. But in order for you to get financing, it's going to be necessary for the business owners to show where the business is going. So that strategic plan can communicate to other folks in financing, maybe even potential investors or future partners, where the business is going. And it also requires you to put some thought into why you are in business. Some businesses are solopreneurs. They're really into it. This is a hustle. This is what I do. And that's okay. But identifying what your goals are and being able to articulate those goals to folks that may be interested in helping you grow, if that is what you desire to do, that's a way to communicate it to them.
All right. So we have another comment was, well, it was a question. What does Bernard's logo look like? If we go to the last slide, that would answer that one. So that's all 3 of their logos and branding. So to answer that question, and then the next question was from Dr. Marcus Harris. He says, entrepreneurs often use the phrase fail forward. Can you all discuss how entrepreneurs can overcome failure and move forward with a new venture or a revised business model?
I'll take that one, speaking from experience. In addition to providing our services to small businesses, we are federal contractors. And getting into the federal space definitely requires a certain level of knowledge, persistence, and expertise. And what I mean by that is sometimes we are ambitious as entrepreneurs and we want to take on more because we see the dollars associated with it. And so one of the things that we did in hindsight that I now know is we partnered with a potential, with another contractor, and things did not go as well as planned. So what did we do? We took that as an opportunity to learn what processes should we have in place, what team members should we have in place. We identified mentors and advisors, and now we're doing pretty good. But I will say we learned a lot more than we lost when we worked on that government contract. So sometimes putting your foot out there, and just being willing to grow and being willing to fail gives you the option to learn things that you may not have ever considered before that will propel you to the next level.
To add on to that, I would like to respond to Dr. Harris and mention that my background is in change management, mergers, acquisitions, and joint ventures as well, part consulting like Elizabeth. And that's why I decided to invest in invest my time and my energies into the graphic design marketing world, because sometimes, like I mentioned, that's where, not sometimes, majority of the times, the message is not well translated to the market. And I have to say that to answer your question, how entrepreneurs can overcome failure and move forward with a new venture or revised business model was the question. My first question when I meet with prospective clients is your venture or what you're getting into, because it doesn't have to be a business, right? It can be a nonprofit. Is this a need or a want? That's a very important question. Again, is this a need or a want? Majority of times, you think something is a need and it's really a want. When it's a want, you're starting to sell to people. You want to really channel your energy and your passion towards something that's a need. When it's a need, it will come naturally. It will avoid failure, is what I'm getting to. So not everything you would do is a need, but it's timing. And you can look at all these companies that have come up, from MySpace to Facebook to Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Zoom, as we're using it. It's a need. It's a timing issue. So you really have to be strategic as you begin to venture into business. And yes, you might fail because you oversaw certain things, but to add on to that, the panel you have here is really a critical panel for starting an organization. You have a business expert like Hodari, who worked for the biggest business organization in the United States, government-wise. You have Shaniece, who is the numbers individual, and you have Elizabeth, who is a strategy person. And of course, you have myself, who is going to help you use your branding or your marketing material, help you create that. So the goal is to ensure that answer these two questions. Is it a need or is it a want? And on top of that, have you aligned with the necessary parties to venture into this? So that's my response. Good question.
That is a great question. Dr. Harris, when I first saw your question, I started thinking about failure and even how one designs failure. So since I've been talking about human capital, I'm going to approach that from a really human-centered lens. Failure is how you define it and how you orient it. Failures, right, are lessons. What did the experience teach you about the moment? What tools did you cultivate and develop as a result? Sometimes our greatest lessons, like our greatest lessons, happen when we messed up. Sometimes they happen when someone did us wrong and when we had to go into our personal toolkit and either bring out some skills, develop some new skills, acquire some skills somehow to make something happen or to create a different environment for yourself or to get out of that rough place. And so one of the ways that entrepreneurs can fail forward is by maybe even using a different word other than fail. it could be pivot forward. It could be reimagine forward. What did what happened in the past teach you about what's needed in the future? And the answer to that question is going to be the key to longevity.
Great answers. I hope that answered your question, Dr. Harris. Is there any more comments or questions out there? But one thing I want to pose is no other questions that have been posted yet. But one question I just want to ask each of the panelists, since you all are into your fields and well into your own small businesses, is as we think about, what resource did you use to get your business started? Was it an organization or a person that you went to first when you thought about opening up your own business? Can you share your thoughts on that?
Sure, I'll take the first. I did reach out to agencies like the SBDC. I remember attending some of their trainings and courses. I'm a professional when it comes to numbers, but when it comes to marketing and legal and HR, that's beyond me. So I attended quite a few of the free seminars. And then, especially on the government contracting side, I utilized the PTAC extensively. They know me by first name. And what I then learned is that those resources gave me a very good foundation. However, I had to control my expectations and what I was going to get from the PTAC and what I was going to get from the SBDC. They're not a one-stop all be all, but they laid a very solid foundation. And oftentimes they pointed me in a direction that we needed to go in order to grow the firm. I would say there are a lot of resources. Manage the expectation, but also implement the advice. So for instance, the PTAC referred us over to the Michigan Defense Center. Michigan Defense Center had some funding that was available to help government contractors. Yes, we had to put some money up, but the Michigan Defense Center matched what we were putting up in order for us to get on a GSA schedule. So reaching out to resources, even if they don't necessarily have the answer or what it is that you're looking for, oftentimes they can point you into the right direction.
I guess I'll jump in next. There are 3 places I'll speak to that really helped me get started. The one is the SBA. I've got to give a shout out to Hodari. He was my introduction to the SBA. The thing is, the SBA, all of the resources are free. We pay for that, for the services and the resources through our tax dollars. And so I encourage anyone, even if you are just dreaming, maybe in 50 years, you might want to start a business. You are paying for free resources that are available to you. Get in touch with the SBA, look on the website, find out what's out there. The second, I'll give a shout out to the Build Institute based here in Michigan. And I believe there are a few, they're launching in a few other spaces as well. The Build Institute, the Detroit area, really focuses on cultivating and bringing together small cohorts of aspiring or new or re-emerging business owners, and you get a lot of the tools that you need to get going. And finally, I would say probably the most important place I looked was to the past. The name of my firm is Raymond Whittaker, and it's a nod to 2 families, to the Raymond family and the Whittaker family. The Raymonds were farmers from Louisiana who came up to Michigan during the Great Depression, and they had a dream for opening up a barbershop. And they put their kids through college through the barbershop. They put their kids through school and created just a really, really strong legacy of entrepreneurs. The Whittaker family, they were the intellectuals, but they were also business owners. So while they were university professors way back before Black people really did that or allowed to do that, they kept things going by building a laundromat, by sewing clothes on the weekend. And I said to myself, if my ancestors, who had far fewer resources, who had much less education, and in some cases were just a few years removed from slavery, if they could do it and they could keep food on the table, by all means, I could do it. And some of that inspiration is what keeps me going.
Bernard, you wanna chime in? What resource help your business out and get started?
Yes, I'll be happy to. I leverage a lot of local resources from again, when I started my business, I classified it as a need. So I directly leveraged, because of the work that we do, it's really finding individuals that are looking, or organizations that are looking for help. So I have leveraged the SBA, I have leveraged TechTown, I've leveraged the Michigan Minority Supplier Development Corporation, I have leveraged the National Business League. I leverage local organizations in order to introduce myself. Again, every business varies. So for me, the most important thing was being in front of people and talking about how they want to help their business and how they can grow their business. That's it.
So we have two questions real quick. One is from Tammy. She said, I will be 50 this year. Do you think trying to starting a business this late in age is too late? I want to leave it to the panelists to answer, but I know I tell anyone it's never too late to start your own business. But anyone else want to chime in?
No, ma'am, it is not too late. I'll put it like this. You never want to find yourself many years later wondering, what if I had done that? What if? Most of us business owners, we could go to a typical 9 to 5. If things don't work out, and they will work out, but if things don't work out for whatever reason, you're probably employable and can do it. You don't want to live with regret. Try it. It's not too late. Life is precious, and you got this.
I would just add to that, Bernard picked up on it. If you identify a need and you have the solution, it doesn't matter how old you are. The question is, do you have a solution? It doesn't have to do with your age. So if you have a need, you've identified a need and you're able to meet that need, by all means, go ahead and start the business. Doesn't matter how old you are.
To jump onto that, Tammy, this is a perfect age to do it. Matter of fact, you've had enough time to be in the 9 to 5 or in the job industry that the person that has nothing to lose is the most dangerous person. So in my opinion, I would say you should start, and I'll be excited to help you with your branding.
Then another question, Bernard, and Elizabeth and Shaniece, you can chime in on this if you want. What makes a successful marketing strategy?
Ladies?
Sure. And I'm going to leave it to the most of this response to the marketing expert who's online. But one of the things I'll share is it's how you lift your unique value proposition. Sometimes being different is more important than being better. And I know that sounds weird, right? But what is your unique value proposition? What is the thing that you bring to the world that only you can bring? And how do you articulate that through your messaging? How do you articulate that through your logo? How do you articulate that through the service? I talked about policy and practice a little bit earlier. How do your practices nod back to what you say is important? And that's the thing that is a unique value proposition.
Bernard, you want to add more to it?
Yes. A successful marketing strategy, that's a very good question, a loaded question. In my opinion, first, jumping onto what I mentioned earlier and Elizabeth just finished, is how are you a niche differentiator? What value proposition are you bringing? How are you different from everybody else in the market? And why do I want to spend money at your business? So as you begin to draft your marketing strategy, it has to be the wow effect. And everything that you're doing, from talking about it, the product you're offering, to the selling tactic that you're using. So you really have to ensure that you're a niche differentiator, but also that your value proposition and core values are here in the 1% percentile.
My last 2 cents to that is what we've just given you in terms of a good marketing strategy are the tools for implementing it, but how do you determine if it's successful? You have to have metrics, some sort of unit of measure. How much money did you spend? How many new customers did you get in exchange? So I think the true measure is first identifying the metrics that you use to evaluate whether or not the strategy was successful. Know exactly what those measures are, monitor those measures, and then you determine if it's been successful or not.
Okay, so the last question, what kind of person makes a successful entrepreneur?
I'll take this.
You gotta have perseverance, persistence, no weeks. You gotta be tough. You gotta be tough.
I think you have to have a deep, deep belief in yourself. You have to have a deep belief in your gifts and a connection to whatever the source of your gifts is, whatever you call that and however you identify it. And finally, don't be afraid to win.
Great remarks. My two things are, you have to want to succeed and you have to be willing to sell. No matter what you do, when you're running your own business, you're selling. Whether you're doing it directly or not, you have to love selling. If it's 6 o'clock in the morning, you better act like it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and smile and sell. And don't sell. And my third piece of advice, do not persuade people. Tell them what it is, because if you persuade them, they will come back and they will find a way to not be a part of what you're doing. So no persuasion. You have to be willing to sell and you have to want to do it. That's it.